We're becoming more and more a sort of a nation or a people who are becoming voyeurs. We're observing life rather than actually participating in it.
How much of your work is intuitive?
I think when you start off, you learn something, it's still sort of at the academic level. And then what happens is, then it becomes intuitive as you really begin to understand it. I remember one of the professors that taught me, he said, the example was what's called cranial nerve testing. And he said, I could teach a chimpanzee how to do these tests. He said, but understanding what they actually mean is a completely different matter. Basically, the intuitive stuff comes from, as I say, our memory banks. We've had experiences, we've had formal learning, all that gets placed in various memory banks within the brain, and then we call on it. So when we're learning something new, it's happening on the right side of the brain. Once we know it, it happens on the left side of the brain. Where is wisdom? You know, we talk about the wisdom of Solomon. The classic story of two women who claimed the child was theirs. So Solomon said, fine. He said, simple. We'll cut the child in half and you get half each. One woman said, no, don't do that. Don't do it. And he said, fine, you are the mother, here is your child. Because she would rather lose the child to this other woman than have the child killed. The real mother. Now, that's wisdom, and it's not the sort of thing you could be learned. You know, you could be taught. You could learn in a formal situation. So, I think probably wisdom is something that I suppose it comes with age to some people, to a degree, but to have a high level of wisdom is something which is almost like a gift. So it's almost like you're a high-functioning autistic person, so you've got an amazing processing ability, but you've got the sympathy, the empathy, and all the other things that can go with it.
Who's the wisest person that you know that's currently alive?
Wisest person? Probably, I know, probably one of the professors that taught me when I was younger, in that he had an amazing ability to remember things medical, neurological. I mean, absolutely amazing. That he could recall the tiniest little details, almost as though he had a photographic memory. He could recall, and it doesn't matter, you know, you could bring a patient in front of him live, you know, him being filmed, and he hasn't seen the patient before. You can mention any disease under the sun and he'll know every fact about it. So, amazing from that point of view. A very successful, what would you call him? I was going to say businessman, but businessman makes him sound as though he's just looking for money, but you know, financially successful. Speaks something like 6 languages fluently and can switch from one language to the other without any hesitation. And basically sort of a kind person, but within a very strict framework, so that he can control his environment, which is very, very busy, and give what he needs to give and can give within sort of set frameworks. So probably one of the wisest men I've ever met. But at a more sort of homely level, probably my father, because my father had this ability to always come up with something, whether it was just wise words or an appropriate piece of humour that stopped you from being a complete wally. So that was like a homely sort of wisdom, as opposed to this chap who has got an amazing brain, but the ability to think laterally. Because there are many people who can absorb massive amounts of information, but they can't then manipulate it.
Do you think children can be wise?
You could argue that they've got certain genetic things. Quillard de Chardin talked about a layer of thought that, you know, that covers the world. So you've got things that live below the ground, things that live on the ground, things that can live above the ground, things that float above in the atmosphere. And then you've got a layer of thought. And there's an idea that we inherit, not part of that, because that's just, you know, a concept that he came up with, but we inherit a certain body of knowledge within our culture, so that we fit within our culture. It's only when you give a child, you know, a formal knowledge, experience, homely knowledge, all these things, that you then have an ability to do something with it. So a child could be wise beyond their years, but you can't expect wisdom, say, from a 2-year-old.
What typifies a wise culture to you?
I mentioned Solomon. Solomon is well documented in the wisdom of Solomon. If you look in different areas, you know, in Buddhism, in Taoism, in all areas, there's amazing wisdom. I don't know, I think probably you would have to gather in sort of bits, you know, from here, there and everywhere, and mix it all together. There are few people that actually take the time. As I said earlier, it's not just a matter of seeing something, it's smelling it, it's tasting it, it's touching it, it's experiencing it. So the more we become, through computers and things, we become voyeurs. You know, we can access so many things, but we don't touch a book anymore. We don't feel the pages. We don't smell the ink on the page.
So therefore, if you're going in search of wisdom, connecting with your senses more would be a route to enhance wisdom in that individual, yes?
One, allowing yourself to experience and be part of whatever, nature. 2, allowing yourself to feel it. 3, having enough humility to use your life's experiences without colouring it too much, because in many ways we tend to colour things for our own advantage, to gain something from it, for a reward. What you've got to do is detach yourself from all of that, be in touch with nature, other people, allow the feelings to come into you and appreciate them. And with humility, I think it was Socrates who said, when you think you know everything, you know nothing. When you think you know nothing, you can then learn. And once you're in that mindset, then you can move on, evolve, develop, and perhaps develop your own level of wisdom. It's being able to listen to a piece of music and feel it, as opposed to having your eardrums just vibrate because of, you know, the music coming just to your ears.
How important do you think it is to be wise? In yourself?
Well, I could answer that by saying, when ignorance is bliss, it would be folly to be wise. Well, that really goes back, doesn't it, to sort of the meaning of life. Why are we here? What's the point of it all? When I was probably late teens, early 20s, I looked at sort of comparative religions, I looked at philosophy, trying to sort of work out what it was all about. I'm not a religious being, so I couldn't say, well, you know, it's just to serve the purpose of God or the gods or whatever. So I couldn't come up with an answer. So I decided that the only thing I could do was to leave as much behind of me that was good. Rather like, you know, the writing on the wall, I was here. So there's something to say that I was here, I tried to make the place a better place, and perhaps I gave the world a modicum of wisdom. Don't know if that answers the question or just poses more questions.
We'll find out. Thank you very much, Robin Pauc.